Today we are going to take you back to Athens
and show you one of the most recognizable structures in the world.
Welcome back to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. If you are faithful watchers, we're sorry that we haven't posted one for a while. It's been a busy summer, and so we didn't get around to making them like we were. But we're back, and now we are going to tell you some more about Greece. This time we're going to tell you about some of the places that we visited. And before we were just telling you about some of the ministries there. We did also talk about the Parthenon Stadium there in Greece, which is pretty cool. But we're going to tell you about one of the things in Athens that is probably the most notable thing there. And that is the Acropolis. For a moment, my mind just blanked. But we're going to tell you today about the Acropolis and specifically about the Parthenon up there on top. So, Acropolis is actually a Greek word which means like a high place in a city. It's not so often when people say the Acropolis in Greece, they are referring to this specific one. But there are actually multiple Acropolises in Greece. In fact, when we went to Corinth, we saw from a distance the Acropolis in Corinth, which was way, way, way up on top of a mountain. And from down below, it looked really cool, like a castle type thing. But we could not get up there. And so anyway, there are many Acropolises around, and this is just the most well-known one, and so it is often referred to as the Acropolis. So this is looking at it from a distance. You can see the Acropolis there with it, even though it is a hill, they built a wall on the side that you're looking at. So that is a tall stone wall. And then in the bottom left-hand corner is another structure, not on top of the Acropolis, but at the base of it, and we'll talk about that one in just a moment. And then the Parthenon on top. Now, if you were to get up and fly over it, like we did for just a moment here,
or your drone did,
or the drone, you will see a better view. That thing that was down in the left-hand corner that you just saw was as a wall. You can now see is a big, kind of like a little theater. And then in the center of the picture, you can see the Acropolis itself rising above the city. It is long and narrow with the Parthenon sitting on top. But let's first look at this thing down here in the bottom. So this is known as the Odeon of Herodotus Atticus. And it's actually really well preserved. But originally this wall and these arches probably would have extended all the way across there on the front. And this is what it looks like on the inside. You could see that from above too, but this is from the back. And so people would come here to watch shows, and it's actually still being used today. They actually had a schedule down below telling when you can come and watch. They were like, there's like a dance studio that does shows here. I think they also have concerts here. And if you look around the edges on the top of this arena type thing here, you can see little modern structures set up, and that's where they will put lights and speakers and all sorts of things so that they can still use it for shows.
But it does have really, really good acoustics. So if you were to stand at the bottom of one of these and somebody else were to stand at the top or in any of those like seating area places, you can hear them really, really well. Because when they designed them, they figured all of that sciencey stuff out, which is crazy because now we have to use microphones for everything. But the way that they built these in the areas that they did, the sound would travel really well. So we got to see one when we were in Philippi too, and I've seen them in Israel. And every time it always amazes me at how somebody could talk down in the middle of that thing and you can hear them really well on all those edges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really neat. And this was before they had microphones and amplification systems, but they didn't need them because they knew how to use acoustics really well by the way they built them. Also, there is, let's see, I don't know, it doesn't really show it in this picture, but on the far right, kind of in the middle, you see like a yellowish, brownish part of the hill there that has nothing on it. There actually was a theater there at one time too, and it was bigger than this other one. It extended all the way up that side of the hill, and so if you go down to the base, which isn't in this picture, you can kind of see there are still some seating areas, but a lot of it has since been gone, either taken away and repurposed for other things, or just eroded away. But this Acropolis actually had two of them at one time, and the one that we just showed you here was the smaller one. So now, once you walk past the Odeon and you get to the entrance of the main part of the Acropolis, you have this large entrance that you walk through. And you can see from this view that they built it all up with big stones and bricks and such on the side of the hill.
And huge stairs.
Yeah. But as we get a little closer, you can see this is what it looks like. And they had all these large, really tall columns, and at one time there was a roof over this entrance. And so in order to get into the Acropolis proper, you would walk through this huge, imposing entrance that is amazing just to look at. And this is more of a close-up view at some of those pillars, and you can see that they were built in sections, but huge stones that they carved these out of marble and such. And this is what the ceiling or the roof would have looked like when it covered the whole thing. You can see just a small portion of it there. So after you then walk through this entrance, you are greeted by the Parthenon on the right. Now this is actually the back side of the Parthenon because it looks a little better. This is a side view. Oh, there we go. This is a side view of the Parthenon, and you can see that the front is covered in scaffolding. And so I didn't really want to show you that picture because it's not that nice. But if you look at the sides here, you can see that some of the columns aren't just yellow, they have a lot of white mixed in with them. That's because those are areas where they have replaced the column with newer marble, so that it looks like the original, but maybe the other had fallen apart or was taken away or whatever, and so they've rebuilt those ones so that you can see what it used to look like.
Something that's interesting about these columns too, I don't know if you can tell it specifically from the picture, but they actually get smaller as they get toward the top. So like the physical piece is different, and I think they talked about how it's leaning too, which is crazy if you stop and think about all the math that they had to do to figure that out.
Yeah. So yeah, these columns aren't straight all the way up. They do taper in the middle. And then also, a lot of the pieces of the Parthenon are now in the Acropolis Museum nearby. And so, like here, you look up at the top, and it would have had a triangular roof shape, but on the front and on the back, there would have been these, not murals, but
like a diorama, like a
yeah,
frozen picture.
Yeah, sculptures of people that was very typical of Greek architecture and even Roman architecture to have those on the front. They tell stories. And so those pieces are all in the museum rather than out here in the elements. So I showed you this on the side. Here's another picture from the side. We went up there twice. Before we went up with our tour group, we went up on a Sunday afternoon because it was free. And that was actually the better day to go because it had just rained, and so we had all these cool reflections. And we got to be up there for the sunset, which
Yeah.
made for some really amazing pictures, especially when you combine the reflections and the sunset. Now, the Parthenon is the main structure up there, but it was actually like a whole little city of its own with all sorts of different temples and things for people to visit and do ceremonies and such. This one is a smaller building off on the side, and it's still pretty big itself. But this was the Temple of Athena. Now, this also, right here, was... The Parthenon itself was also a structure in honor of Athena, but it's debated as to whether or not it was actually a temple itself. This one, for sure, was a temple to Athena. Now, Athena was the goddess of love, and so Parthenon means, in Greek, it means like virgin woman or maiden, and so that's where it gets its name. But yeah, so that is the Parthenon. Just amazing structure, especially how it has survived over the years. This building itself is way, way older than anything you'll find here in the U.S. And in many parts of Europe. It has been repurposed over the years. In fact, in like the 600s, during the Byzantine era, it was a temple, or it was a cathedral, I don't know what you call it, not a cathedral, a church to Saint Mary. And we know that Mary isn't someone who should be worshipped, but they did, and being the Parthenon and meaning what Parthenon means in Greek, it still held that meaning for the Virgin Mary. Just weird things. At one time it was used during a war to house ammunition, and so it was bombed because the enemy knew that, and that's how it lost its roof. So it has a long storied history that we're not going to get into now, but it's impressive that it still is there today. And you can see it from all over the city because it is located on that hill, the Acropolis, that high point. And there we are with baby Jaden looking cute.
Yep. So it's really a fun thing to go and visit, and if you're in a lot of parts of Athens, you can just look up and see it, especially at night because it's got these cool lights on it too. Very fun.
Yep.
Okay, well, I have a new missionary story. And the cool thing about this missionary story is, at least at the time that they wrote the story, which wasn't super long ago, this was a true, like, today alive missionary. And the name of this story is The Pineda's Faith in the Storm. And they were missionaries to the Dominican Republic. So here's a map on the back in case you want to kind of like figure out where the Dominican Republic is. Here's the edge of Florida. And then here's South America, and the Dominican Republic is here. It shares an island with Haiti. So this is the area that they went to in our story. But have you ever gotten to something and you just wanted to give up and quit because it was too hard, or you were worn out, or you thought it was going to be too much work? So a lot of times even missionaries might want to quit. But they don't, because they've been given a special job by God to share the gospel with the people where they're at. And sometimes missionaries are right in their home country because they can serve best there. Or sometimes they go to another country, but they have to go through a lot of big challenges. Like maybe they have to raise money so that they can live in this place. Or maybe the people don't want to hear the message that they have to say, and so the people of the area might laugh at them or hurt them or put them in jail. Or sometimes missionaries go through tough things like sicknesses or storms, things like that. If you think about a lot of the missionary stories that we've talked through, a lot of the missionaries have had a lot of struggles and hard things, but they choose not to give up because they know this is their job and this is what God has called them to do. And it should be encouraging to us to make sure that we're good examples to other people and that we don't just give up just because something gets hard. Well, the missionary we're going to talk about is Abner Pineda, and he is actually a missionary with the company that puts out these missionary stories, Child Evangelism Fellowship. So they do like Good News Clubs, so kind of like little Sunday school classes for kids in the United States and around the world. And so we're going to learn about this guy who is a missionary with the Child Evangelism Fellowship, and we'll learn about some of the the tough things he had to go through before he got to the missionary field. I'll turn the page and show you a real live picture of him. So here is Abner Pineda and his wife, and we'll talk about his story as a little kid first. But we'll start back when he was a little boy. So there was a sound of a little baby crying in the middle of the night, and it was baby Abner. But instead of being born in a hospital, he was born in the church where his dad was the pastor. And Abner grew up in Honduras. So here's Central America right here. Honduras is kind of right here in the middle part of it before we get to South America. So he grew up in Honduras with his family, and his dad was a pastor. And as he grew up, he loved to play soccer. Soccer is one of the favorite sports of a lot of countries around the world, actually, especially Central and Southern America. South America. And so he played with a lot of his friends, and they would get together and hang out and play games and stuff. And one of the things they really liked to do was make little slingshots. So they'd take pieces of guava branch trees that would be just the right shape for a slingshot, and then they'd find pieces of leather or rubber, and then they'd practice like shooting at different things and getting targets. And it was one of their favorite things to do as little boys growing up in Honduras if they weren't playing soccer. Well, he and his friends really enjoyed going to Sunday school as well. And their favorite teacher was Miss Vigil, and she would teach their Sunday school class. And one day she passed out a coloring page after the lesson, and the coloring page was going to be about heaven. And she said, really, the people who are Christians are the ones who can color this because they're the ones who are going to get to see it. And so Abner thought, he was about 8 years old, so he had been to church a lot. He thought, well, does going to church make me a Christian? No. Well, my dad is a Christian because my dad is a pastor. Does that make me a Christian? No. My mom is a Christian. Does that make me a Christian? No. He was going to have to make the decision for himself. So could he really color that coloring page? Was he really going to be able to go to heaven someday? Did he really believe Jesus on his own? You're going to have to come back next time to figure out what he decided and what conclusion he came to.
That's really neat. I'm glad that they are making stories like that.
Yeah, it's cool to hear about like a nowadays missionary. I mean, we do that too at the end of our stories, but it's cool that they put his story into picture form.
Yeah. All right, we're going to tell you today about a missions group that I have told you about before in a different way. And that is our Lighthouse missions team at church, because we went on a missions trip last year to Arizona. But this year we went to Denver, Colorado, and if you didn't figure it out already, we worked with a deaf ministry. And so you can see there the finger spellings in ASL for Lighthouse Missions Team, Denver, Colorado. So here is our group. It was mostly the same group that we had last year that went to Arizona, with a couple additions. And this year we were going to do something. So last year we were involved in like a church planting ministry, but this year's ministry was actually something that will have more of an international reach, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So drove out to Denver, and this is Mile High Stadium there at Denver, where the Denver Broncos play. And this is one of the nights when we were driving back from our ministry to our place. But a lot of the ministry took place at this place called Master's Hands Bible Church. And so you see the team there wearing our missions trip t-shirts, and on the front they say, "I am unique." And on the back, which you won't be able to see here, we had that same finger spelling font, and they said, "Hands that sign, hearts that serve." And it said it in ASL without the letters, so you have to know sign language in order to read the back of the shirts. So for the first few days that the team was there, they got to help with a VBS. Now, the kids in this picture at the VBS are not deaf kids, but they are from families that have deaf parents or other deaf signers. And so thankfully, the team did not have to learn sign language in order to communicate with these kids. But they were still able to do this VBS with them in normal English. And then on Sunday that we were there, we got to go participate with Master's Hands Bible Church and help with their services. So at the first service, we actually were just more observers. And Pastor Mackey, he is there in the blue. He preached. But then the second service, we had testimonies. And so we shared a testimony, and then someone from the church shared a testimony. And then we alternated back and forth for over an hour just sharing testimonies. And Pastor Mackey would interpret for us. He would do ASL for the church so that they knew what we were saying. And then when they were up there signing, he would interpret for us in English so that we knew what they were saying. And it was a great time. This morning just went by so fast. I couldn't believe it was already done because it was just such an enjoyable time of sharing with their church. Also, there was one man that morning who got up and he told us how he had not yet been saved, but God had been working in his life and he was still thinking. And actually that afternoon, right before we had lunch with the church, he got saved. And he told Pastor Mackey that it was time he needed to place his faith in Christ. So Pastor Mackey went through the gospel with him, reviewed it with him, and the man said yes, he was ready to accept Christ as his Savior. So that was really neat. Pastor Mackey is the head of an international deaf ministry. I'm going to tell you more about him in a later episode. For now, I'm just going to tell you that we were there to help him with a special ministry that he is using to get the gospel out around the world, and that is sign language puppets. So each morning while we were there to do these puppets, he would share with us somewhere he's been and some of his ministry and how these sign language puppets can help benefit those other ministries. So at this time he was telling us about a ministry in Africa. I believe it was actually in Ghana where he went, and about a deaf person there who really received the deaf puppets really well. And he said the reason we want to do these deaf puppets or these signing puppets is because people in other countries won't listen as well to just a normal person as they will to a puppet. So if you take that same person and put them with a puppet, they will listen better. And he said it was funny because after he got done with these puppets one day, everybody just wanted to come up and get a picture with the puppet. So what a sign language or a signing puppet does or is it's a normal puppet. You can see one here on the right side of the picture. But instead of it speaking verbally, we put a shirt on it, and then we put our arms through the shirt, and then we sign. And so it's completely silent, but we're able to communicate with people who know sign language. And so we have here a group of people that were doing one of the skits, and Pastor Mackey is working with them on memorizing the different sign language. And then here's what it looks like when you put it all together. You have one person sitting down who puts their hand in the puppet to hold up the head, and then you have one person who stands behind and puts their hands through to do the ASL. And it's really hard work because you have to situate yourself just right, and then it gets really hot in there. But I was really proud of these guys and the job that they did. We built our own puppet stage, and this is what it looks like. So we have the people sitting down right at the front. You can see their feet hanging down below. And then behind them, standing actually behind that second curtain, are the people who sign. And they can kind of see through the black fabric, but not very well. And so as they put their hands through the shirts and are signing, they're kind of doing it blindly because it was just really difficult for them to be able to see through there. But you can see off to the side is Pastor Mackey. And so they would watch him for the signs as they were going through the different skits to make sure they knew them well. And we also interviewed Pastor Mackey while we were there. I'll share more of that another time. And my job was to video these puppet shows. And so I had 3 video cameras set up. And after we signed, people would come back and they would watch the videos to see what they could do to improve their own character. And we still haven't finished it yet, in the sense that we haven't edited the videos. So once we are able to finish those videos, we will then give them to Pastor Mackey, and as he travels around the world, he will encourage other ministries to use signing puppets to share the gospel. And when he does that, he will also give them a puppet so that they can get started. And so one of the things we did was we bought 4 new puppets to give to him so that he could start giving them away to people. And then they will watch the videos that we made to see how they can use them in their ministries. Here is our going away picture. Our team about doubled in size once you put in Pastor Mackey's family, but it was such a great time to get to know them, spend time with them, serve with them. And soon, once we are finished with these videos, the ministry that we had for those couple weeks will be able to go out to other parts of the world. So we're really excited about that. It was a really neat ministry. It got us excited about looking for the deaf in our community and learning some more sign language so that we can communicate with them. I think all of us now know how to do the alphabet and several basic signs. And so it was a great trip.
Yep. So Joshua was there, I promise. I don't think he was in any of those pictures, though.
Yeah, because I took all of those pictures.
But he was there for part of it because baby Jocelyn showed up right before. Well, right as they were traveling down there. So I didn't get to go, but he did. And I was really excited to see the pictures that the teens posted and to pray for them as they were there. So that was cool. Make sure you come back next week to learn more about Greece, more of our story, somebody else serving God around the world. And we'll see you then.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.